And it's now time to move forward into the terrible twos. That's Mike's going to be like, no, you mean the bottom line. And so now he knows. Bottom line, terrible twos. It's the final two questions of the show, the most important questions of the show, some would say. Question number one, Dr. Mohamed Noor. Pressure's on. On a scale of 1 to 10, what would, oh man, I'm scared to hear this one. What would you give the first episode of Silverhawks entitled The Origin Story?
I think it fits the description you said earlier. It's a terrible two.
Oh, wow. Solid joke. Are you giving it a 2, really?
I'm really giving it a 2. Wow. That was terrible. It really felt like it was written by a 9-year-old. Not even for a 9-year-old, but by a 9-year-old.
Did you? So you're saying you didn't enjoy it at all?
No.
I love you are by far the most sure of your answers of anybody we've ever had on this show. You're certain.
Yep.
What could they have done for you to give it a 5 or 6?
I had a plot. I mean, that would have helped. I mean, really nothing happened, like you said, besides Monstar getting out of the prison. Nothing else happened in the whole episode. It was just restating several different times who these people are. Like, okay, got it. But if they had a plot, associated with, let's say they had the first intro and then the theme song, and then from there they had like, okay, now Monstar is getting together with these people and they're doing their first plot, and then something actually happens where the Silverhawks have to go try to stop them. That would have been okay. And they're like, okay, that's reasonable. Yeah, that would have gotten it, maybe even above a 5 at that point.
Melissa, scale of 1 to 10, your thoughts?
I'm gonna give it a 5, because I think it has potential. Yes, this was an intro to an intro to an intro to an intro. However, this theme song is catchy. And it has been playing in my head since I watched it yesterday.
So that means 5 days from now, you're going to be like, I give it a 0. I'm so sick of this song.
Yes, that. And for the positive things that I mentioned earlier, and the potential for the bad guys. I actually thought the poker guy looked pretty cool, so I would be interested in seeing more of that one. Melodia, yes, I agree with Mohamed there. She looked pretty interesting, and the guy with the tuning fork, he kind of looked pretty interesting. So there was some interesting aspects about it, and Monstar did scare me a bit. So,
I love that the theme song was a positive in pushing the score up. It's kind of the opposite of the Enterprise effect for most people. Like Star Trek fans they're always like, I hate Enterprise because I hate the theme song. Like, really? Theme song changes that?
I like it too. After a while, you just get, it gets.
You start singing along
too. Yes.
Totally.
And, yeah. By season 3, I'm definitely singing along. So.
Yeah. Wow, this one you're singing along from episode 1.
I was, but it was so easy to remember.
So I'll tell you, on a scale of 1 to 10. Michael right now, if he were here, he would say Ryan loves it when cartoons introduce the characters. So he'd probably make some kind of joke about like, so he must have given this a 15 because it was all intro all the time. All you get is more intro and more. And he's just picturing Ryan with his popcorn going, yeah, give me more intro. Give me more intro. And it was kind of like that, honestly. I took so many notes because they kept giving us more information on the characters. And there were so many characters. I mean, look, there were like, 5, 6 good guys. There were 9 bad guys. That's 15 character intros. Not even talking about the green shirtless alien guy that had the big joystick, or the commander guy, or when the guy said, hey, gentlemen, I present the Silverhawks. I'm like, there's a lady right there. I remember her. She's literally right there next to you. And he's saying just gentlemen. And that was weird. So I was like, that guy's obviously the misogynist of the group. But like, we kept getting more and more information and I loved it. But then it did end. And I was like, I needed more introductions on the bad guys. I needed a 7th introduction. So I was actually prepared to give it like an 8 or something, because I was really enjoying all of this cool information and an introduction into the world. When you're introduced to the characters, you're introduced to the world. But then it did end, and I'm like, I didn't get to meet the bad guys. I was told about them, but I didn't get to meet them. I also didn't get a plot, so I have to drop it down to a shocking 6.1.
Wow.
It's going to be a 6, but I bumped it up to a 1 because, I enjoyed it. I did enjoy it. That's probably it. Look, I think it was just back then cartoons were more serialized a lot of times, like Robotech and shows like that. They were serialized. So this was just the first episode in a serialized thing. But obviously we know that like in serialized television, you still have to have some plot.
Yeah, exactly. I think you're being very generous. There were a lot of serialized cartoons that had like a plot in the first episode.
And I think it just achieved what it set out to do, which was an infomercial to sell toys. And I feel like they absolutely achieved what they're trying to do.
Sure.
But anyway, however, for the purposes of this podcast, we all had to watch the first episode of Silverhawks. Sorry, Mohamed. But now that the podcast is over and you're free to move about the internet, would you watch the second episode?
Oh, hell no.
Really?
No.
I'm so shocked.
That's our first hell no, I think.
I even went up to my wife after. I was like, wow, I don't know if I've seen a first episode that bad before.
Wow. Wow.
And this guy's watched Babylon 5.
Actually, I haven't.
No. That was just a joke from Mike.
I know. I remember.
So no chance, huh?
Mm-mm. I mean, if somebody told me that it was like, it really, really, really is awesome, and that first episode is a dramatic outlier, I might give it a try. But it would take convincing.
What about if Michael said, if you watch the second episode of Silverhawks, I'll watch the second episode of...
I would do it.
What was that show again?
Avatar.
Avatar.
I would totally do that for that. I would totally do that for that.
Wow.
Maybe a deal can be made.
I mean, it's just like 20 minutes, whatever. I mean, I can just sit through it.
All right, Melissa, what about you? Would you watch the second of your own volition?
I probably would not. Only because, there's other things that I am planning to watch instead of that. Like it introduced me to the fact that Who's the Boss is on IMDb channel on Amazon Prime, and I'm like, oh my gosh. So WTF, what the Who's the Boss?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, no, probably not. Even though the professor guy reminded me of a mix between a Vulcan and Dracula. And that was kind of fun, but probably not.
Wait, who is like the Vulcan and Dracula? Right, there were like those two aliens. There was a man and a woman, right?
Mm-hmm.
Dude, I was
The
like,
dude
why?
was like-
I said there's like an elf / Vulcan that speaks with a Bulgarian or Romanian accent. Like it was like
Reminded me
a
of
weird,
Dracula.
a weird Star Trek, Lord of the Rings kind of ish alien, but he spoke, like Dracula, like Romanian accent. That was, and then the lady that looked the same didn't really have that accent. She was kind of British.
He had a posh accent. Yeah.
There are multiple countries on their planet.
True.
Which is allowed.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, for me, would I watch the second episode? Mohammed's looking at me like, are you kidding me with this one. Look,
It's like you said no to Twilight Zone.
Yes, I would. I would, because I want to see what I'm
where
like
it's going.
Like
For the bad guy, the bad
not
guys.
that the show deserves me to watch the second episode, but when it ended, I was like, I want to know. I want to see these guys actually. I want to see what the actual interaction is. Do they outsmart the bad guys? Do they just beat them with boring brute force? Do they only fight like one or two bad guys at a time? Do they split off into separate missions and these two fight these guys? And like, I don't know what the formula of the show, of the interaction, of how they defeat the bad. That's the whole point of the show to me for cartoons back in the day, is how do they go about doing these things? And there are so many different ways. Or do they just select two people for a specific mission? Like Mask, the cartoon back in the 80s, they'd be like, these three people go on this mission specifically.
Or like Super Friends that did that all the time. It would be like, this week it's Green Lantern with Flash and Superman doing this thing, you know?
And that's so cool. That's interesting, because then you get to see how they interact with each other and how their special skills adapt to. Now, I don't think the good guys do that, because they have all their slots together on their ship and they all click.
Yeah.
But what about the bad guys? Do they do that? Do they only fight one at a time? Are they like super bad guys? They only fight one at a time, kind of like Batman only fights the Joker this week, and then next week he fights the Penguin. Anyway, so I'm curious. I would. Will I?
Because we only got part of the story. We only got part of the story.
Yeah.
Not even part of the story. We got the introduction of the introduction of the introduction of the introduction.
Mm-hmm. I do apologize to Michael Kenyon Rosenberg. I'm sorry if you like this show. I'm really sorry.
I think Mike is going to rate this very low too.
Really?
I think he's.
But I will watch the second if you watch Avatar.
Yeah.
Does that mean I have to?
You don't have to. That's okay.
Well, I think that maybe if he watched it before as a kid, he just remembers, the show. He doesn't remember specifically the first episode that, but we'll see. Can't wait to find out. That's for sure. Anyway, Mohamed, thank you so much for filling these big shoes. Really appreciate you. You're awesome. Your intros were really fun. Your narrations. Melissa, we like having you around. Thanks so much for joining in the fun, and we'll see you again real soon.
Thanks for having me.
And what I'm trying to say is, before I get to that, if you want us to review a show, in the comments below, just say WTF Battle of the Planets. Was that what it was?
Yep.
Or WTF Who's the Boss? And please make sure Star Blazers. Like, subscribe, tell your friends, comment below. And what I'm trying to say is, this podcast was one giant intro.
This podcast was a great time reminiscing about old cartoons we once liked.
You never liked it.
This podcast was the one of the first times I've seen Mohamed be negative about something.
It's kind of thrilling, right?
Oh. Wow. It's another side of you, Mohamed.
So everybody remember, be nice to each other. Remember what Mr. Michael Kenyon Rosenberg likes to say.
Don't forget to be an organ donor, and don't forget to watch the first of things.
Freeze frame.